Welcome to Wealth and Means, advice dressed up like hard work.
Thanks to our listeners in the U.S., Vietnam, Singapore, Denmark, Iraq, Germany, Hong Kong, and Spain. It's episode 34. Let's get into it.
This week, we found something sitting beneath a lot of well-polished surfaces. AI that's writing better sentences, but narrowing the range of ideas underneath them. Agents that have grown hands and are clicking buttons. An SEC filing that may be the most important crypto story in years, and it's the dullest one you'll ever read. A national monument in a legal fight over whose name goes on the door. And a man who invented the fountain pen because a bad one cost him a contract. We've got 13 stories in what you didn't see in the news, covering the politics of fiber and minerals, smart glasses, and the analog backlash. A 19-year-old who just beat Novak Djokovic from 2 sets down, and the quiet infrastructure build-out underneath the tokenization story. In Wake Up Ready, it's a data-heavy week. The May jobs report drops Friday, and after April's negative 92,000 print that blindsided the consensus, the stakes are real. We've also got ISM reads, Broadcom's second quarter AI earnings, Dollar General's consumer weather report, and a cluster of IPOs, including a quantum computing company going public for the first time. And then, our knowledge bomb is about Blue Origin, Jeff Bezos, patient capital, and what happens when a moonshot gets expensive. Humor Me visits the modern Neo-Luddite and the Amish and discovers who's actually running the better AI governance model. The greater debate puts Donald Trump and John F. Kennedy in the same building, with very different ideas about what a national institution is for. And Let's Invent Again finds a man who turned a ruined insurance contract into something the world is still writing with.
The surface keeps getting smoother. The question this week is what's actually holding things up underneath?
Let's go.
Each week we explore ideas that help you pause, reflect, and think more deeply about the opportunities all around you.
It's the perfect mix. A little information, a few stats, some real-world insights, and just enough deep talk to make you feel smarter before your second cup of coffee. A quick thank you to our sponsor, agentweekly.ai, chronicling the absurd, the ambitious, and the algorithmically challenged corners of the AI agent economy. What you didn't see in the news this week is that AI may be making writing look better while making ideas look more alike. The punchline sounds backwards, which is why it matters. According to Georgetown's psychology department, Adam Green's research was featured in the New York Times for work comparing personal statements before and after ChatGPT, looking at how the diversity of words and ideas changed. The emerging concern isn't just cheating. It's that AI can raise the surface quality of writing while compressing the range of thought underneath it.
So the essay gets shinier, but the mind gets more average. That's a very expensive trade.
Exactly. The second-order issue is institutional. If schools, companies, grant committees, and hiring managers start rewarding polished sameness, they may accidentally penalize the strange, rough, original idea before it has time to become legible. This popped this week because the New York Times essay gave the research a mainstream frame. The risk isn't ugly writing. It's beautiful groupthink. That same pattern shows up in the next story. AI isn't just writing anymore. It's moving the cursor. According to Microsoft's Copilot Studio updates, computer-using agents are now generally available, meaning an agent can operate web and desktop apps through the same interface a human would use. OpenAI has also described computer use as a way for models to inspect screens and return actions that software can execute. The hook is simple. The chatbot era is becoming the button-clicking era. The important shift is that this changes the problem from what did the model say to what did the model do. Once AI can shop, file, code, route, and execute, the scarce resource becomes permission. Who authorized the action? What credentials did it use? What audit trail survives when something goes wrong?
We spent 2 years arguing about prompts, and now the prompt has hands.
And that's why the topic accelerated this week. Microsoft turned computer use agents from a demo into an enterprise product surface, which pulls the conversation out of the lab and into procurement, security, and compliance. But here's the mirror image. If AI agents need to learn how office work happens, someone has to watch the office. According to Reuters and Wired, Meta's Model Capability Initiative has drawn employee and privacy scrutiny because it collects detailed computer use data, including interactions like mouse movements, clicks, navigation, and other workplace activity, to train AI models. The hook: the company isn't just building agents to do work, it's instrumenting workers so agents can learn the choreography. The key question is whether workplace data collected for one purpose can be safely repurposed for another. That gets especially sensitive when communications cross borders and privacy rules differ. The second order effect is bigger than Meta. Every large employer trying to automate knowledge work now faces the same uncomfortable math. The best training data may be the work itself. This popped because Reuters reported new EU privacy concerns this week, turning what could have been an internal operations story into a global labor and regulation story. From AI watching the office, shift to finance watching the plumbing. Paxos received SEC clearing agency registration for its securities settlement company, according to Paxos and financial press reports. That sounds dry because it is dry, and that's the point. The hook is that crypto's most important story this week wasn't a coin, it was a filing cabinet with a blockchain inside. The key fact is that Paxos says it's the first blockchain-native firm registered to provide clearing and settlement services as a central securities depository in the United States. Some reports also noted limits and timing details around the approval, including that launch isn't immediate. Why it matters is that tokenization only becomes meaningful when it plugs into custody, clearing, settlement, and compliance. The casino is loud. The back office is where the institutional money either shows up or walks away.
Crypto grows up the moment it becomes too boring for crypto Twitter.
Exactly. And it popped this week because the SEC approval gave the tokenization story a regulatory milestone instead of another vibes-based cycle. That infrastructure theme continues in semiconductors, but not the glamorous ones. China's mature node chip capacity is becoming a trade policy flashpoint. According to Reuters and European policy reporting, the EU is preparing a tougher posture toward Chinese industrial overcapacity, with concerns spreading beyond electric vehicles into chemicals, metals, clean technologies, and strategically important industrial inputs. The hook: the chip war isn't only about the tiny advanced chips in AI data centers. It's also about the boring chips in cars, appliances, factories, and grids. The key fact is that mature node chips are older generation semiconductors, but they sit inside enormous parts of the real economy. If China builds too much subsidized capacity, Europe and the US worry that domestic suppliers could be undercut in the same way solar manufacturing was. But there's nuance. Not every analyst agrees that mature node overcapacity is already proven. The risk is forward-looking. The attention reason is Europe's late May shift toward a broader overcapacity toolkit, which pushed the topic from specialist policy circles into the wider trade conversation. That same industrial sovereignty argument is now moving through wind power. According to Financial Times reporting summarized by energy outlets, Nordex's chief executive called for tougher EU restrictions on non-Western wind turbine suppliers connected to European grids, citing security and strategic infrastructure concerns. The hook: clean energy is becoming a security perimeter. The fact pattern is familiar. Chinese suppliers can often offer cheaper equipment, faster delivery, and deep state-supported ecosystems. European firms worry that if they accept that bargain too freely, they'll lose another clean tech industry while also placing grid-connected hardware under geopolitical risk. The implication is that the energy transition is no longer just about decarbonization. It's about who owns the equipment, who services it, and who can reach into it when politics turns. This popped because Europe's broader China trade debate intensified this week, and wind turbines moved from climate policy background music to industrial policy lead guitar.
Nothing says green transition like a tariff fight over turbine blades.
And underneath both the chip story and the wind story is the minerals story. Critical minerals had a very policy-heavy week. Reuters reported a White House memo authorizing higher pay for national security staff working on critical minerals and advanced materials, while AP and Reuters reported Quad initiatives around energy security, port infrastructure, and critical minerals cooperation. The hook, the new arms race, isn't just chips. It's rocks, refining, shipping lanes, and permits. The key fact is that batteries, defense systems, semiconductors, magnets, and grid equipment all depend on mineral supply chains that are often concentrated geographically. The second order issue is that resilience isn't a slogan, it's a staffing problem, a project finance problem, a permitting problem, and a processing problem. You can discover a mineral deposit and still lose the supply chain. It popped this week because critical minerals were tied to live national security hiring, quad diplomacy, and energy security planning all at once. From state capacity to grocery carts, fiber is having a moment, and not just because the internet ran out of protein jokes. Fiber maxing is the trend of aggressively increasing dietary fiber, often through beans, grains, seeds, vegetables, and high fiber recipes. Mayo Clinic has framed it as broadly positive when it pushes people toward whole foods, while Forbes and health outlets have covered the TikTok version with the usual caveat: don't treat your digestive system like a venture-backed growth experiment. The reason this matters is GLP-1 drugs. Even people not taking weight loss medications are absorbing the new consumer logic. Satiety is valuable. Appetite control is valuable. Gut health is marketable. So CPG companies, restaurants, supplement brands, and grocery retailers are going to test whether fiber can become the next protein.
Which means somewhere a branding team is workshopping disruptive lentils.
And they may not be wrong. This popped because fiber maxing has been moving from social media diet language into mainstream health, food, and consumer product coverage. That brings us to hardware, where the next interface may not be another screen. Google said at I/O that Gemini-powered intelligent eyewear is coming, including audio glasses first, with partners like Samsung, Warby Parker, and Gentle Monster. According to Google's own announcement and Wired's hands-on coverage, the first wave is less about full sci-fi immersion and more about directions, messages, photos, translation, and spoken help while staying hands-free. The hook, smart glasses are back, but this time the bet isn't put a TV on your face. It's put an assistant near your ear. The key fact is that audio-first glasses lower the friction compared with bulky mixed reality headsets. The bigger implication is that the next consumer AI interface might be ambient. Translation while traveling, summaries while walking, messages without pulling out a phone. It popped this week because Google I/O gave the category a concrete 2026 product path instead of another concept video. And if interfaces are changing, advertising is changing too. Hyundai's Night Fishing is a 13-minute branded thriller tied to the Ioniq 5, and according to Hyundai and awards coverage, the film used the car's camera perspective as a storytelling device. The hook, one of the more interesting car ads, barely behaves like an ad. The key fact is that Night Fishing was built as a short cinematic experience, not a conventional product spot. The vehicle becomes the camera system, not the hero shot. That matters because brands are trying to escape the exhaustion of infinite short-form hooks. When every feed is optimized for the first 2 seconds, a 13-minute film becomes weirdly contrarian. This isn't new in release date, but it resurfaced as a current case study because marketers and creators are looking for examples of long-form branded entertainment that people actually choose to watch. That same anti-feed instinct shows up in the analog backlash. Design and culture outlets have been tracking anti-AI crafting, analog lifestyles, visible imperfection, and handmade texture as premium signals. The hook, in a world where everything can be generated smooth, rough edges become proof of life. The key fact is that this isn't simply nostalgia, it's differentiation. Hand-drawn lines, paper grain, physical process, handwriting, board games, and tactile objects all communicate authorship in a way mass-generated assets struggle to do. The second-order implication is that human-made may become a market category, not a moral argument, like organic food, but for attention.
So the future is AI everywhere, plus a $38 notebook that proves you still have a soul.
That's basically the consumer economy in one sentence. It popped this week because the AI creativity debate and the creator authenticity debate collided. The more capable the machine gets, the more valuable the visible human process becomes. From handmade to homemade, 3D printing is quietly getting more practical. Recent consumer and maker coverage from Tom's Hardware, Shopify, and 3D printing industry sources points to better home printers, improved software, multi-material systems, and more niche businesses built around custom parts. The hook: 3D printing is no longer waiting to become the future. It's becoming a useful workshop appliance in weird little corners. The key fact isn't that everyone will print their own dishwasher. They won't. The interesting applications are replacement parts, tabletop gaming pieces, custom fixtures, hobby tools, prototypes, and micro-entrepreneur products that are too niche for mass retail. The second-order implication is local manufacturing at the edge, not reshoring a factory, but moving some tiny slice of production into garages, schools, workshops, and small shops. This popped because 2026 coverage is less about hype and more about usability. Lower cost printers, better materials, and fewer hours spent begging the machine to behave. Now to the market scanner, where biotech keeps producing strange little attention spikes. Radiopharma and oncology microcaps showed up through names like Actinium, Delcath, and Zevra. According to company releases, Actinium announced Canadian patent allowances for Actimab A and Iomab AT. Delcath has been reporting growth around its liver cancer treatment business, and Zevra announced NASDAQ rule inducement grants tied to hiring. The hook: in small-cap biotech, a patent notice, a hiring grant, or a treatment center update can become attention fuel. The key fact is that these aren't the same kind of event. One is intellectual property, one is commercialization, one is talent acquisition. But scanners often compress all of that into the same signal: unusual activity. Why it matters is that biotech attention is both science-driven and reflexive. A real clinical or commercial milestone can attract traders. Trader attention can then amplify a story beyond the underlying data. This popped because several small oncology names had fresh corporate updates at the same time. Market scanners were hunting for non-megacap momentum. A related but cleaner market structure story is OTC Markets itself. OTC Markets Group reported first quarter 2026 results in May, and according to its own materials, gross revenues rose 14% year over year. Its Moon ATS, an overnight trading venue for eligible NMS securities, has also been highlighted for rising overnight activity, with the company introducing a Hong Kong team for Asia-Pacific growth. The hook: the attention economy doesn't sleep, so trading venues are learning not to sleep either. The key fact is that overnight trading is becoming more structured, more data-rich, and more international. That matters because global retail and institutional demand increasingly wants U.S. market exposure outside U.S. market hours. The second-order play isn't just a hot OTC ticker. It's the infrastructure that turns scattered overnight demand into a measurable market. This popped because OTC Markets May results and Moon ATS commentary put numbers around a behavior that used to feel like a fringe trading habit. Finally, sports gave us a global attention story that was too strong to ignore. According to Reuters, 19-year-old Brazilian João Fonseca stunned Novak Djokovic at the French Open, coming back from 2 sets down in a 5-set match. Meanwhile, Sports Business Journal reported on the latest global padel report, showing continued global growth in padel courts, clubs, and players. The hook: the next sports attention wave may not come from the leagues American media already watches every day. The key fact is that Fonseca is a genuine rising star story, while padel is a participation and infrastructure story. One is talent discovery. The other is court construction, club economics, equipment, and lifestyle positioning. Together, they show how global sports attention now moves before the U.S. mainstream fully absorbs it.
The algorithm scouts prospects faster than the old sports desk.
And this popped this week because Fonseca's upset made the tennis story unavoidable, while the new padel report gave the broader niche sports trend fresh numbers. So the meta patterns this week are pretty clear. First, the surface is getting smoother while the real value moves underneath. clearing systems, mineral chains, trading venues, and authorization layers. Second, AI is splitting attention in two directions at once. More automation on one side, more demand for visible human originality on the other. And third, the best emerging stories aren't necessarily the loudest.
They're the ones where a small signal points to a bigger system changing shape.
Now let's wake up ready. The macro calendar for the coming week is dense, and the jobs report at the end of it sets the table for everything that follows. Start Monday. The ISM Manufacturing PMI releases for May. April's reading came in at 52.7, solidly in expansion territory. The headline number matters less than two sub-indices. Watch prices paid, which has been running above 70 and signals persistent input cost pressure. And watch new orders, which is the earliest forward signal on manufacturing demand. If prices paid stays elevated while new orders rolls over at the same time, that's the combination the Fed most wants to avoid: sticky costs meeting softening activity. The market's currently pricing continued moderate expansion. A simultaneous move, costs up, orders down, reprices small cap industrials and materials names first and fast.
Manufacturing at 52 looks healthy until you read the fine print.
Monday also brings Dollar General's first quarter earnings. Wall Street is expecting $1.88 a share on $10.81 billion in revenue. But the number isn't the story, the language is. Dollar General's customer base is lower income and disproportionately sensitive to food prices, gas prices, and steady employment. If the call features cautious same-store sales guidance or elevated commentary on shrink, that's your most direct read on whether April's jobs shock is showing up at the checkout counter. Watch for any language about foot traffic. If it's down, the consumer stress signal isn't a blip. Family Dollar, Dollar Tree, and discount retail names all re-rate on Dollar General's tone.
Dollar General's earnings call is the best consumer focus group that money can't buy.
Wednesday evening, Broadcom reports its second quarter after the close. The bar is significant. Consensus sits at $22 billion in revenue, and AI semiconductor revenue is expected at $10.7 billion, which would be 140% year-over-year growth. CEO Hock Tan has pointed toward $100 billion in AI chip revenue by 2027. The precise signal to watch isn't whether they beat or miss by a few cents. It's whether Tan narrows, reaffirms, or hedges that 2027 language. Broadcom's custom silicon pipeline is the clearest market proxy for hyperscaler capital spending commitments. If hyperscalers are still accelerating AI infrastructure, Broadcom should be accelerating with them. Any wobble in the forward guidance reprices custom AI chip names, Marvell, Indie Semiconductor, and AI networking plays within the hour after the call.
Broadcom doesn't just report earnings, it files a capex confession on behalf of every major tech platform.
Also Wednesday, ISM Services PMI for May. The April reading was 56.1. Services has been the economy's backbone through all the manufacturing noise. The watch point here isn't just the headline, it's whether the employment subindex, which came in at 51.8 in April, holds above 50. A dip below that line in services employment, combined with the ISM manufacturing employment reading already at 48.8, would tell a consistent story about labor market softening that the Friday jobs number is likely to confirm.
Two PMIs on the same day is a dress rehearsal for what Friday's going to feel like.
Thursday and Friday, a cluster of IPOs close their roadshows and begin trading. The one to watch is Quantinuum, a quantum computing company targeting a $1 billion raise on NASDAQ at $45 to $50 a share. Also pricing this week, Ineo, an industrial energy systems company raising roughly $1.9 billion, and Applied Aerospace and Defense listing on the NYSE at about $634 million. The Quantinuum IPO is a market mood test. Quantum computing has been described as transformational and perpetually 3 years away for most of the last decade. This is the first time a pure-play quantum company has brought that optionality to public markets at scale. Watch whether it prices above, within, or below the range, and whether it trades up on the open. If it prices well and opens strong, IonQ, which is already public, moves in sympathy, and the quantum sector gets a re-rating. If it prices flat or below, that signals even a hot IPO market draws the line at technology with no near term revenue certainty. Year to date, IPO proceeds are up 86% versus the same period last year, so the window is open. The question is whether it's open for every category or just the ones the market already understands.
The quantum IPO is a Rorschach test. What you see in it tells you more about your own risk appetite than the company's prospects.
And then Friday, the May jobs report. April came in at negative 92,000 non-farm payrolls, against a consensus expectation of positive 50,000. Government shed 6,000, private sector shed 86,000. That's not statistical noise. The market is pricing a bounce in May, expecting a return to modest positive territory. But watch the private sector number specifically. If it's negative again, the June 16th FOMC meeting becomes a very different event than the one the market is currently pricing at a 98% probability of no change. The Fed's dot plot updates that week, one of only 4 times a year. A second consecutive negative private payroll print puts real pressure on that hold at 3.5% consensus. Treasury yields, small cap equities, and regional bank shares all move hard at 8:30 Friday morning if this number surprises in either direction. My personal watch this week is the gap between the US and China readouts from the Trump-Xi summit. China's announcement mentioned tariff reductions. The American readout didn't. The US said China agreed to $17 billion in annual agricultural purchases. China noted improved market access without specifying a number. On rare earths, the U.S. said China committed to addressing shortages of yttrium, neodymium, and indium. China's statement didn't mention rare earths at all. That gap has to close before the G7 meets in Evian on June 15th, because transatlantic trade partners will want to know exactly what the U.S.-China framework looks like before they sit down with Washington. Watch for any joint clarification this week, or let the silence become its own signal.
And that is how you wake up ready. Here's the knowledge bomb. Jeff Bezos didn't build Blue Origin because he needed another company. He built it because once Amazon became a money machine, he wanted to convert commercial success into civilizational infrastructure. That distinction matters. Blue Origin was founded in 2000. For more than 2 decades, Bezos funded it largely with Amazon wealth, including the famous strategy he described years ago, selling roughly $1 billion of Amazon stock a year and putting it into rockets. Recently, Blue Origin has reportedly considered outside investment for the first time as it tries to scale launch cadence and move from founder-funded patience into industrial execution. That's not normal venture capital. That's not raise, blitzscale, exit. That's one massive winner being used as fuel for the next frontier. And the lesson isn't become Jeff Bezos. The lesson is capital has stages. In the first stage, concentration builds wealth. Bezos didn't get rich by owning a perfectly diversified portfolio of low-fee index funds. He got rich because Amazon worked and he stayed concentrated through volatility that would have shaken most people out. But in the second stage, wealth becomes allocation. The question stops being how do I get rich and becomes what do I believe is worth funding for 25 years? That's where Blue Origin becomes interesting. Because Bezos isn't just buying rockets. He's buying time. Time for engineering cycles, time for failure, time for infrastructure to catch up with vision, time for a market that may not exist yet to become obvious later. And that's the part most investors miss. Everyone says they want long-term compounding. Very few people want the boredom, expense, ridicule, and uncertainty that come before the compounding becomes visible. Blue Origin is a masterclass in patient capital, but it's also a warning label. Because patience doesn't eliminate risk. It only gives risk more room to reveal itself. This week gave us the cleanest version of that lesson. Blue Origin's New Glenn rocket exploded during an engine firing test at Cape Canaveral. No one was hurt, but the setback matters because New Glenn is central to Blue Origin's ambitions in heavy lift launch, Amazon satellite deployment, and NASA lunar missions. That's the paradox of moonshots. The bigger the upside, the more expensive the tuition. Space doesn't care how rich the founder is. Rockets don't give discounts for net worth. Physics is the most ruthless auditor in business. And now Blue Origin appears to be entering a new phase. The company is expanding aggressively in Florida, including a planned $600 million Cape Canaveral manufacturing expansion called Project Horizon, with an upper stage facility of roughly 830,000 square feet and an estimated 500 jobs. NASA has also outlined moon-based missions that include Blue Origin's Blue Moon Mark I Endurance lander, delivering payloads no earlier than fall 2026. That tells you something important. This is no longer just a billionaire's hobby. It's becoming part of America's space supply chain. And that's where the wealth lesson changes. Early on, Blue Origin could be run like a private conviction bet. Bezos could write the checks, absorb the delays, and keep the vision insulated from investors asking why the quarterly numbers looked like a controlled burn. But industrial scale is different. Factories, launch pads, lunar contracts, satellite customers, government timelines, and launch cadence all require a different kind of capital stack. Even billionaires hit limits when the ambition becomes infrastructure. That's the second knowledge bomb. Founder mode gets you started, but systems mode gets you scaled. At some point, the question isn't whether you still believe. The question is whether you've built the financing, operations, talent density, and partner network that can carry the belief without depending entirely on one person's checkbook. That applies far beyond rockets. A founder can carry a company through the wilderness. But a company that wants to matter has to become bigger than the founder's personal stamina. For investors, this is where Blue Origin becomes a case study in sizing your dreams correctly. There's a lazy version of this story that says, take huge concentrated bets because Bezos did. That's not the lesson. The better lesson is earn the right to take concentrated bets. Bezos could fund Blue Origin because Amazon had already created enormous surplus capital. He wasn't risking rent money on rockets. He was redirecting winnings from one extraordinary compounding machine into another long-duration thesis. For normal investors, the translation isn't go all in on space. It's build a durable core, then reserve a defined slice for high-conviction, long-duration bets. Maybe that slice is 5%, maybe it's 10%. The point isn't the exact number. The point is that moonshots belong in a portfolio, not as the portfolio. Because the space economy is real, but it's not magic. The global space economy is already worth hundreds of billions of dollars, and some forecasts see it crossing the trillion-dollar mark in the early 2030s. But the opportunity isn't just rockets. It's satellites, communications, navigation, Earth observation, defense, logistics, software, robotics, materials, insurance, and all the boring infrastructure that makes the orbital economy usable. That's the part to watch. The wealth may not only be made by the company with the most dramatic launch footage. It may be made by suppliers, sensors, materials, software, satellite operators, defense contractors, data companies, insurers, robotics firms, and boring infrastructure businesses that become essential picks and shovels for the space economy. In gold rushes, the durable fortunes are often made by the companies selling shovels, maps, genes, railroads, and financing. Space may rhyme with that. So here's the real Bezos lesson. Wealth isn't just accumulation. Wealth is optionality. It lets you fund what the market is too impatient to understand. But the discipline is just as important as the dream. Allocate with intention. Redirect wins into the next arena. Give your best ideas enough time to work. Bring in partners when scale exceeds your personal capital. And never confuse a moonshot with a guarantee. Blue Origin may win. It may stumble. It may become one of the great infrastructure companies of the space age. Or it may remain a brutally expensive reminder that the future charges interest before it pays dividends. But Bezos has already given us the portfolio lesson. First, build the engine. Then choose what it funds. And the question for the rest of us isn't, can I build Blue Origin? The question is, what's the long-term bet I believe in enough to fund patiently, size intelligently, and hold through the fireball? And that's the knowledge bomb.
Humor me for a second. The modern neo-Luddite isn't your grandfather's Luddite. Your grandfather's Luddite heard a machine start up and reached for a brick. The modern neo-Luddite hears a machine start up and opens a 4,000-word notes app essay about technological sovereignty, posts it to Substack, screenshots it for Instagram, then joins a Discord server called Return to Analog. These aren't anti-technology people, exactly. They're anti-bad technology people. They don't want facial recognition cameras, algorithmic bosses, gig work dashboards, slot machines, social apps, data centers, drinking electricity like a hedge fund at an open bar, or refrigerators that listen to your family argue about oat milk. Which is fair. Their stated values are privacy, autonomy, community, attention, and a lighter footprint. Beautiful. So naturally, where should these principled resistors go? Amish country. Because the Amish have been running the original delete the apps lifestyle for centuries. No doom scrolling, no push notifications, no software update that somehow makes your buggy worse. Just horses, barns, woodworking, and the kind of community resilience that makes Silicon Valley founders say, "We're building that," and then raise $70 million to reinvent neighbors. But here comes the plot twist. While the urban neo-Luddites are throwing their smartphones into the East River and then asking someone to film it for TikTok, some Amish communities are apparently experimenting with AI. That's the most 2026 sentence ever written. The people with horse-drawn buggies are testing large language models, while the people with $1,400 phones are saying technology has gone too far.
The buggy has entered the chat.
Exactly. And honestly, the Amish may be the only people approaching AI with the right governance model. They're not asking, can this scale? They're asking, will this ruin dinner? That's a better investment committee than half of venture capital. Because the Amish have never really been anti-technology. They've been anti-being owned by technology. That's a huge difference. They don't reject every tool. They interrogate the social consequences of the tool before letting it reorganize the community. Meanwhile, the rest of us install a new app because it promises to make our lives easier. And 6 months later, we're doing unpaid QA testing for a company whose business model is, what if anxiety had notifications? So maybe the lesson isn't reject AI. And it isn't put AI in everything, including your toaster, your toothbrush, and your toddler's emotional development. The lesson is selective adoption. Use the tool when it strengthens your judgment, your work, your relationships, or your leverage. Reject the tool when it turns you into feedstock. Because somewhere between burn down the loom and let the loom manage your calendar, finances, friendships, and sense of self sits a very old idea. Technology should serve a way of life, not replace one. Which means the Amish may not be behind the future. They may be beta testing the healthiest version of it. And somewhere right now, a very serious man in a straw hat is typing, "Write me a business plan for a horse-powered data center that respects the Sabbath." The future is weird. Stay selective.
There are debates that stop your scroll, and there are debates that clear the dinner table. It's time for the greater debate. 2 lecterns. No moderator, no slides, just a white marble building in the background, a name carved into history, and the strange modern question of whether a national monument is a museum piece, a public asset, or a trophy case. The setup is fresh. A federal judge has blocked the attempted addition of Donald Trump's name to the Kennedy Center and halted a planned 2-year closure for renovations, ruling that Congress gave the center its name and only Congress can change it. At the first lectern, Donald Trump. Builder, brander, disruptor, president as project manager. His argument isn't subtle, but it isn't empty. He points to the building, not the plaque. He says, look at it. If an institution is failing, if the programming is narrowed, if the finances are weak, if the physical plant needs work, then reverence becomes an excuse for decay. A memorial that no one attends isn't a memorial. It's a very expensive storage unit for national guilt. Across from him, John F. Kennedy. Not as nostalgia, not as Camelot mist, as the argument embodied by the name itself. Kennedy doesn't defend dust, he defends continuity. He says the center wasn't built to flatter a living president. It was created as a national cultural institution and a living memorial, rooted in congressional purpose. The statute matters because the statute is what keeps the building from becoming a rotating billboard for whoever controls the board this decade. Trump moves first. He says institutions don't get immunity because they have good names. A country that can build towers, airports, casinos, stadiums, and data centers shouldn't tolerate a national arts center that treats renovation like a constitutional crisis. His first affirmative case is practical. Federal assets have to perform. If the roof leaks, if the seats are empty, if the audience feels lectured instead of invited, someone has to take responsibility. And in his telling, responsibility means speed, power, pressure, and visible results. There's a murmur in the room. Not agreement exactly. Recognition, because everyone has seen an institution hide behind mission statements while the carpet smells like 1978. Then he makes the broader claim. He says culture belongs to the public, not to a priesthood. If taxpayers help support the place, then the place shouldn't behave like a club where the only acceptable taste is the taste of people who already run the donor board. He doesn't argue for abolishing the arts. He argues for changing the customer. More popular, more patriotic, more accessible, less self-congratulatory. In his best version, the critique lands. Public culture can become so refined that it forgets the public. Kennedy listens without flinching. Then he answers with the one word Trump can't bulldoze. Why? Why does the building exist? Kennedy's first affirmative case is institutional integrity. The Kennedy Center isn't merely real estate. It's a legal and civic instrument. Congress named it. Congress defined its commemorative purpose. Congress made it more than an entertainment venue with federal maintenance issues. Renovate it? Yes. Repair it? Yes. Modernize it? Certainly. But when a board adds the sitting president's name to a memorial by administrative motion, that's not renovation. That's editing the national record without permission. The audience goes quiet. That one lands. Trump leans forward. He says that's exactly the problem. Every time someone tries to act, the system discovers a comma, a committee, a jurisdictional objection, a preservation concern, a lawsuit, a judge. The country is full of people who can tell you why something can't be done. It has fewer people who can make something happen before the scaffolding becomes permanent. Kennedy's expression doesn't change. He says the law isn't a delay tactic when the thing being delayed is self-glorification. The question isn't whether a president can help a cultural institution. Of course he can. The question is whether help requires ownership of the symbol. If the only acceptable renovation is the one that puts your name on the wall, then the building isn't being saved from politics. It's being absorbed by politics. That's Kennedy's knockout critique. Trump says he's defending the public from elites. Kennedy says he's replacing one elite with one man. The room reacts, a few gasps, a few laughs, the kind of laugh people make when the joke has teeth. Trump counters with his own clean shot. He says Kennedy is arguing from the safety of sainthood. A dead president never has to manage a budget, book a season, fix a cracked facade, negotiate a contractor, or answer why the seats are empty on a Tuesday night. Legacy is easy when someone else pays the invoice. His critique is sharp. The Kennedy side can confuse preservation with performance. It can treat the original dedication as if it solves every future operating problem. It doesn't. And that lands too. Because Trump is right about one uncomfortable thing. A living memorial has to live. It can't be merely protected from change. A performing arts center that becomes a shrine to procedure will eventually lose the art and keep only the procedure. Kennedy acknowledges the contradiction. He says a memorial can become sterile. It can become overmanaged, overcurated, too expensive, too distant from the people whose culture it claims to elevate. He grants that public institutions need renewal and that artistic excellence shouldn't be code for social exclusion. He's not defending the velvet rope. Trump acknowledges his contradiction too, though less comfortably. He admits that branding and public purpose can blur. A builder wants credit. A president wants results. A political movement wants symbols. And once those incentives enter the room, it becomes hard to tell whether the institution is being repaired, captured, or merchandised. Now, the debate has escaped the personalities. This isn't really about whether one name should sit beside another name. It's about who owns continuity in a country addicted to reinvention. Trump's strongest case is that inherited institutions often use tradition as a moat. Kennedy's strongest case is that democratic institutions need moats because power always arrives with a renovation plan. Trump was asking, who is brave enough to fix it? Kennedy was asking, who is disciplined enough not to possess it? They're not the same question, and the answer annoyingly requires both. A serious country should be able to renovate a national cultural center without turning it into a personal monument. It should be able to honor Kennedy without freezing the performing arts in amber. It should be able to broaden programming without making taste a partisan loyalty test. It should be able to move quickly without pretending statutes are decorative. That's the tension, not art versus politics. Art is always near politics because culture is how a country explains itself to itself. The danger is different. It's when politics stops funding the stage and starts demanding the starring role. Kennedy gets the final turn, not because he wins every point, but because the building already carries his name. He says the highest use of power isn't always to leave a mark. Sometimes it's to leave a structure strong enough that the next generation can argue inside it without needing to rename it first. Trump smiles at that, half amused, half unconvinced. He points back at the marble and says, fine, but someone still has to fix the building. And for once, the audience doesn't know whether to applaud the poet or the contractor. And that is the greater debate.
Let's invent again. In 1883, Louis Edson Waterman was an insurance agent in New York City with a steady job, no formal training in engineering, and a pen that didn't work when it needed to most. The writing instruments of the day were either dip pens, you dipped, you wrote, you dripped, or early fountain pens that were unpredictable in ways that mattered at exactly the wrong moments. Waterman had an important insurance contract in front of a client. The pen leaked, the ink spread, the document was ruined. By the time he'd found another pen, the client had signed elsewhere and walked out the door. That's the whole origin story. One bad tool at one critical moment. Waterman was 50 years old, with 5 years of formal schooling to his name. He'd worked as a teacher, a carpenter, a book salesman before becoming an insurance agent. He didn't have the pedigree to build a pen company. He had a grievance and a year to pursue it. He went inside the physics of ink flow, working out the capillary mechanics that would make a writing instrument behave consistently. The solution was a nib and feed mechanism that controlled the rate of ink delivery. Not too fast, not too slow, and critically, not when you didn't want it. He patented it in 1884, founded the Ideal Pen Company in New York, and started manufacturing. His pens weren't just functional, they were balanced and elegant. Some carried gold and silver overlays. Some were set with gems. One won the Medal of Excellence at the Paris World Exposition in 1900. By 1901, Waterman was selling 1,000 pens a day. Now, here's the unexpected consequence, and it connects directly to everything we talked about this week. Waterman built a pen to solve a reliability problem, not an aesthetic problem, not a status problem, a problem of function. The thing needs to work when the stakes are real. And it worked so well and looked so well that it became both a workhorse and a status object at the same time. Then the ballpoint pen arrived after World War II. Cheaper, disposable, reliable enough for most purposes. The Waterman pen went from professional tool to luxury almost overnight, not because it got worse, but because the bar for adequate moved down and the market bifurcated. High-quality Waterman fountain pens are still made today. They're now sold as premium objects, as gifts, as tools that announce you take the act of writing seriously. In a week where we talked about AI that generates smooth writing over narrower ideas and about analog craft becoming a premium signal in a generated world, the Waterman story runs in an interesting direction. He didn't make writing look better. He made writing work. And the thing built to function became in time the thing that meant something. The lesson isn't to romanticize the fountain pen, it's that the tool you build to solve a real problem has a longer life than the tool you build to look like progress. Sometimes the ink blot is the beginning. That's it for another episode of Wealth and Means, advice dressed up like hard work.
We hope you enjoyed the arc. From AI that polishes the sentence while the idea underneath narrows, to a rocket that proves even a billionaire's patience doesn't buy a discount on physics, from the pen invented because a contract leaked to an institution fighting over who gets the name on the door. The pattern was simple: surface versus substance. Because first principles are rarely flashy.
Subscribe, rate, and share this episode. It helps more than you think.
We do this for you to help you have a better week, a sharper mind, and maybe even a longer attention span.
And a special thanks to our sponsor, agentweekly.ai.
Till next time, stay curious.
Stay kind.
And keep compounding.